There is a huge amount of content that is created and that is rarely or never used. So we see nearly 80% of content that is created for the field is rarely or never used. So why is that?
What if I told you there's a company, not a pharma giant, not a flashy startup, but a quiet force behind nearly every piece of content a doctor sees from a life sciences brand?
Now here at Veeva, our mission is to build the industry cloud for life sciences.
A company that doesn't just sit at the table, it built the table, wired it with tech, layered it with data, and automated every handshake happening across it.
My focus is commercial content. The customers, the people that I work with on a daily basis are more the marketing and medical teams when they're thinking about how are they best informing and educating their customers on the medicines that are brought to market.
Emma is at the forefront of how content moves through one of the most highly regulated, complex industries in the world.
My part of that two in a box is customer facing, and that's what I love. You ask, what do I do on a day-to-day basis? It's that.
From innovations like Veeva Promomats to AI-driven breakthroughs like MLR Bot.
I get to work with very smart, very passionate people on a daily basis who work across the spectrum of pharma in so many different places.
I remember my early days as a rep at the start of my career, and we used to have those paper-based visual aids, and I would always use the visual aid from the previous quarter. In this episode, we dive into how Veeva is building what I like to call the infrastructure of trust, connecting teams, simplifying compliance, and unlocking new ways for science to reach those who need it most. One of the most exciting innovations I've come across is the MLR Bot. And I can't tell you how excited I am to learn more about this. We are talking about a process, medical, legal, and regulatory review, that's historically been slow, manual, and high stakes. How did this idea come about, and what role did customer feedback play in shaping it into the tool it is today or it is going to be in future?
This is a new solution. It's going to be part of Veeva AI, which is a major initiative for Veeva, more broadly, a highly strategic area for us at Veeva.
This is about technology, yes, but it's also about bold leadership, quiet reinvention, and a future where content isn't just created, it's orchestrated. Emma Hyland, welcome to Drug Diaries. Before we jump into today's episode, I just want to say something from the heart. Over 93% of the people who watch this podcast regularly haven't subscribed. And listen, I get it. Life is busy. You click, you watch, you move on. But if you've ever felt like this show brings you value, if it has made you think, sparked a new idea, introduced you to something inspiring, then I have a small favor to ask. Please hit that subscribe button. It might not seem like much, but to me, it means everything. This podcast has always been a labor of love. No sponsors, no script, just honest conversations with people trying to make a difference in the world of healthcare. And your support, your one click, helps me keep doing that. It helps more people discover these voices. It helps this community grow. So if you're here, if you believe in this, please consider subscribing. Thank you for being here. Now let's get into the episode. What if I told you there's a company, not a pharma giant, not a flashy startup, but a quiet force behind nearly every piece of content a doctor sees from a life sciences brand? A company that doesn't just sit at the table, it built the table, wired it with tech, layered it with data, and automated every handshake happening across it. You won't see their names splashed across the front pages, but without them, most of what happens in pharma wouldn't happen at all. When the pandemic hit, everything changed. Face-to-face conversations disappeared, and trust had to be rebuilt digitally and fast. And content became the currency of connection. While the rest of the world was adapting, this company had already anticipated the change. They built the system, the structure, and the strategy that now powers modern engagement across life sciences. And that company is Veeva. And today I'm joined by one of the minds behind that transformation. Emma Hyland is the Vice President of Strategy and Commercial Content at Veeva Systems. She's not just talking about the future, she is designing it alongside her colleagues. From innovations like Veeva Promomats to AI-driven breakthroughs like MLR Bot, Emma is at the forefront of how content moves through one of the most highly regulated, complex industries in the world. She's helping redefine how pharma communicates, not with more noise, but with more meaning, precision, and speed. In this episode, we dive into how Veeva is building what I like to call the infrastructure of trust, connecting teams, simplifying compliance, and unlocking new ways for science to reach those who need it most. This is about technology, yes, but it's also about bold leadership, quiet reinvention, and a future where content isn't just created, it's orchestrated. Emma Hyland, welcome to Drug Diaries.
Thank you very much. What a wonderful introduction. I enjoyed listening to that.
Thank you. You're very kind. So, Emma, before we dive into the tech and transformation talk, let's bring it back to you. You're the VP of Strategy for Commercial Content at Veeva Systems, one of the most critical engines behind how the industry communicates science. Could you please introduce yourself to our audience and paint us a picture of your role and what a typical day looks like for you in this ever-evolving ecosystem?
Yes, hello, everybody. I'm Emma Hyland, as you heard in that very warm, wonderful introduction. And my role at Veeva is VP of Strategy. I'm focused in the commercial content space of Veeva. Now, here at Veeva, our mission is to build the industry cloud for life sciences. So I get to work with very smart, very passionate people on a daily basis who work across the spectrum of pharma in so many different places. My focus is commercial contents. The customers, the people that I work with on a daily basis are more the marketing and medical teams when they're thinking about how are they best informing and educating their customers on the medicines that are brought to market. Strategy can mean so many different things in so many organizations. What it means here in Veeva is we talk about it as a two in a box. So I'm in a strategy role and then there's a product team and we work very closely together. My part of that two in a box is customer facing. And that's what I love. And that's what I do. You ask, what do I do on a day-to-day basis? It's that. I'm in front of customers, speaking with them every day, telling them about what we're doing, but probably most importantly in listening mode as well. Like, what is happening? How are they working with our solutions? What are they thinking about for the future? And then bringing that back into Veeva as we build our strategy for the future. And I think another part of the role, again, which I really enjoy and most people wouldn't see outside of Veeva, so maybe this is an insight into how it works, is we're sort of like the glue as well. So we have so many different teams, whether it's the customer support team, whether it's our professional services or our consulting or our finance and our setup teams. My job is to coordinate all of those various groups that work across different products, but make sure they know what we're doing, what our goals are in commercial content, how we're helping our customers, and what's coming next.
Wow, that's wonderfully explained. And I think the role of listening to customers' voice is critical when it comes to technology solutions and incorporating their feedback and constantly improving and trying to help them through this transformation journey is critical. So thanks for those insights. Emma, we are living in a moment where the lines between content, data, and technology are blurring fast. In life sciences, that intersection is becoming the heartbeat of how companies engage with HCPs and bring innovation to patients. What's lighting you up about this convergence right now?
I think it's a really exciting time to be in the industry. There's a lot going on. There's transformations all across the industry in various different ways. A lot of different pressures, a lot of different sort of macroeconomic features that are changing things and making it more complex. What excites me, I think maybe I said in my introduction, is that opportunity to learn from the opportunity I have to work across so many customers across the industry. I think the disruption with AI is certainly, for me, what it's doing is it's bringing some real wow moments back to what we do on a day-to-day basis as well. So what I didn't say in my introduction is I've been working in this industry for just over 20 years now. And I started in an organization called Zinc Ahead, which many people know is the solution that was for doing the copy approval MLR processes. And back then, the wow moments were actually showing people that this manual, dusty job bag process could be brought up into the cloud. And those moments of seeing people's eyes sort of go, wow, that is something else. How are we going to do it though? And being able to help them through that process. There's been other moments along the way that have been similar in terms of, well, that's a great change. There's new things we can do. But I think we've just got another big wow moment ahead of us where, how you embrace AI, the power of what it can do, the possibilities, and then how do we really how do we frame it? How do we make it work for us is where we're at. So it's exciting.
Wow, that's wonderful. And Emma, in 2020 alone, digital content volumes tripled. The pressure on commercial teams to move faster, stay compliant, and meet HCP expectations has never been greater. And Viva Promomats and Viva Medical, especially Medcoms and MedInquiry, have become the bedrock for managing that complexity. Could you walk us through the broader vision behind these solutions and what makes them more than just content management tools?
Yeah, I think 2020, yes, it was clearly a big moment for many people in so many ways. But it was something we've been tracking. I think, as you said in your introductions, well, we'd already been tracking that the shift to digital was happening, but this forced it at that point in time. So it forced that change, and we were ready to embrace that. The volumes are continuing to increase and again, whether that's because of like modular content approaches or whether that's now AI. And these are things that we have to be mindful of as we're thinking exactly that. It's not just a content management solution. We are thinking about how we build industry standards, how we can build a suite of solutions that can really help medical and marketing so that they can create content, publish content, manage content, but do it in a way that enables speed, enables quality and compliance. Ultimately, everybody that we work with wants to always ensure that patients are front of mind. Safety is absolutely critical. Nobody wants to do the wrong thing, and having safeguards in place to help make sure that they are doing the right things is helpful.
And Emma, you have championed something that's not always obvious to non-technical listeners: content taxonomy as a strategic lever. In a global landscape where teams are overwhelmed by volume and variation, how does a unified content architecture help simplify operations and, in many cases, unlock speed and agility?
I mean, I'm not a super technical person. I've worked in technology for 20 years, but I think that's perhaps one of my superpowers in this as well, that I get it. And when I also know when you start talking about taxonomy, so if this chapter in the podcast is called taxonomy, people might fast forward or don't stay listening, because actually it's been really interesting. So it was a project I specifically worked on last year. So what we were able to see, again, so fortunate to be able to look across the industry and see what everybody's doing and the hundreds of thousands of different ways that content is tagged, is called. There was a particular content type that we often use in pharma called, and there are 60 something different ways that we've seen it being called, like an electronic detail aid. So the piece of content that somebody in the field would use as they're going and speaking to a healthcare professional, that would be on an iPad, and it would allow them to interactively showcase the medicines, the way that it's working, the mode of action, the efficacy, whatever it is they need to be able to present. That piece of content has, as I say, 60 different names across the industry, which is challenging for somebody in the field who has different people calling it different things. It's challenging for then that marketing team and the regulatory team and the medical teams who all call it slightly different things. But when we think from a technology point of view, and we're thinking about how can you get the right metrics and the data, how can you layer AI, well, some consistency there as well is really important. So one of the things that I was doing last year was looking at how can we take that list of 300,000 plus different ways of describing content into a much shorter list so that we've got a consistent way of describing content in the industry. So one other factor I should say is, of course, this is global. So the FDA in the US, they have a way of describing content. The PMCPA in the UK have a different way of describing content. The ANSM in France, again, translate it, and it's slightly different. And Japan. So part of it was to gather how do the regulators across the world all describe the different content types that we work with as well. So pull all of that together into one industry standard list that is now open and available for anybody to use. So we've embedded it into our technology. And we hope, it's a long-term goal, by the way, we hope that over time, this is something that will become the language that gets used more broadly. Some of our customers have started to use it already, but we know it'll be a longer process for it to be adopted more fully. But yes, that's something that's been very proud to have worked on in the last couple of years.
Wow, that's wonderfully explained. I love the way you simplified such a complex topic for our audience and for me. So thank you for that. One of the most exciting innovations I've come across is the MLR part. And I can't tell you how excited I am to learn more about this. We are talking about a process, medical, legal, and regulatory review, that's historically been slow, manual, and high stakes. How did this idea come about, and what role did customer feedback play in shaping it into the tool it is today or it is going to be in future?
I had the opportunity to work on the taxonomy work last year, and then it's like, what is next? So I've been pouring my energy, let's say, into MLR bot within the last year. So yes, so this is a new solution. It's going to be part of Veeva AI, which is a major initiative for Veeva more broadly, a highly strategic area for us at Veeva. And what we've all learned through working and seeing the opportunities of AI, huge hype cycles, of course, over the last few years. And just being careful not to jump on that and charge ahead, but just very thoughtfully think about how can we really harness this opportunity and turn it into something that's going to be meaningful for our customers. So what we've learned, and again, as we said earlier, listening to customers, many have tried and explored so many different use cases for AI across the industry and specifically in content. And what we've seen is the processes where there's a level of maturity already. They're the ones that are more ripe, I think, for AI to be able to disrupt them and to have an impact. And MLR is one of those processes. As you said in that introduction, it's always been there. It's long, it's lengthy, it can be laborious, and for good reason, because why is it there? The MLR process is to make sure that content is compliant, which means it's saying the right things, and patient safety is always front of mind. The reputation and the trust of the industry that we serve here at Veeva and that many people imagine listening to work in is of critical importance. Anyway, where was I? MLR is really important. AI is a great opportunity in this space. So that's what we've been working in. I've been helping bring this MLR bot solution to our customers. It's not launched yet. It's coming this year. But even in the last few weeks, we've been given more preview access to some of the customers we've been collaborating with. So from the beginning of the year, we've worked with a select number of customers to partner really closely with. And such a privilege to have that opportunity to do it with them. Some who have already explored other things, some who have just not gone there yet. So different levels of experience and expertise, which is a wonderful mix, actually, to get fresh ideas as well as experience. But yeah, great opportunity for me and our product team, the two in a box element, to listen to these customers, showcase what we've got as we're moving forward, as we're developing the product, and get their immediate feedback. And then really see the joy that we can bring when that feedback makes it into the next iteration of what they're seeing, and they can really see what an impact that they're making. So yeah, that's what I've been working on recently.
Right, that's fascinating. And having interacted with numerous pharmaceutical companies, commercial excellence and commercial operations teams, I think this is a high area of interest, and everyone's trying to experiment and trying to leverage AI to make this entire MLR approval process more efficient and more faster.
Yeah.
And as you rightly said, a lot of the companies have already invested. They've built some sort of systems, either in-house, some are trying to build with external partners. What would you advise to someone who's on the verge of starting a new pilot or proof of concept to automate the process?
We're also making sure that we're open and flexible, and it's customer choice. So have a look at what is available, be really clear on what you're trying to achieve, and just make sure that you are, yes, looking at all of the options that are available. And I think where we are, where I'm focusing on making sure we've got something that's going to make a real impact to the industry, is focusing where are the problems, where are the real problems that we can narrow in on. And we believe that actually getting the quality of the content that's going into the MLR process, fix that first, and you'll have created a much better process to start with. And then, and as part of it as well, as what MLR bot will do, is help the reviewers, the medical, legal, regulatory teams that are doing the review, help them with the information that they need so they can make the decisions that they have to make, which are crucial and critical and often take a lot of deep thinking and time. Help them surface the information they need so that they can make those decisions quicker. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Absolutely. I think that's a great piece of advice. Very fair and balanced. Emma, let's talk about automation in context. With features like automated claims updates in Promomats and AI tools like MLR Bot entering the mix, we are seeing content teams evolve from executors to orchestrators. How do you see their role shifting between R&D and commercialization, and what kind of mindset change is required to fully embrace that?
Yeah, I think it's really good point. It's not all about AI. It really isn't. Like there's a lot of sort of automation that is happening on technology wise. But what I like about where you're going there is that sort of mindset shift and the change in we're seeing like the content teams being thinking more strategically, thinking about what they're trying to achieve with content, not just about how can they produce more, produce it quicker, produce it faster, produce it cheaper, and then push it out there. It's what is it really trying to achieve? And the way that that's happening is like moving more upstream from like creating content, thinking about, really, really early days, like working with the regulatory and the medical teams that are, working on these early assets, thinking about the products that are, or the medicines that are coming to market, and really thinking about how they can shape that so they're ready and they're ready to deliver the information and ultimately, I suppose, then that the experiences that the healthcare professionals are that they need and want to get from the pharmaceutical industry. So yeah, I think it's like sort of coming more upstream, thinking about the content strategy, not right, we've got another campaign coming for a new launch and off we go. So I think that's been really interesting to see. I think we're seeing different new skill sets coming in as well, and actually, yeah, a sort of a broader set within the industry.
And we're also seeing medical affairs step into a more upstream strategic content role, especially with platforms like Viva Medcoms. What's driving this shift, and why is it so significant in how companies shape scientific narratives earlier in the product lifecycle?
Yeah. So, with the technology sort of hat on, what have we been doing? So, Medcoms is an application that it helps medical affairs teams with their content. So, how do they build the right strategy? How are they thinking about delivering it? How are they measuring it? And how are they publishing it to where it needs to go? And then looping that information back. And yeah, where a lot of the innovation has happened, again, because we're listening to customers and we're listening and looking at what the industry is doing, is further upstream. So really in that strategic element. So for years, customers have had a scientific communication platform. I hear that with my technology hat on and think, oh, that sounds like a piece of technology. But typically it hasn't been. It's been a PowerPoint presentation, which has detailed, this is the scientific narrative for this medicine and how, the right ways to talk about it in the future. We've been looking at how you can actually modularize that and put it into the technology, because if you can break that down, actually build it into the technology, then you can actually track that through to content creation, content inception, and then content delivery. You can actually measure the impact that original scientific narrative is having. So it's working with pharma in the way that they've done these things, but really modernizing how they can bring that strategy to market.
Transformation is one of those words that gets overused until you see it in practice. Could you share a story or example that illustrates what happens when a company fully adopts Viva's commercial content solution, not just in terms of productivity, but in mindset, speed, or even culture?
Yes. So one of the things I didn't share at the beginning, and part of my role and strategy role at Viva is to think about our customer events. So we have what we call the Viva Summit, happens all over the world. And my role in that is to make sure that we're bringing to these events the content, which is like, what are customers doing? How are they using the technology? And then sort of using that as inspiration to inspire others. So at least twice a year, I get the opportunity to work with customers who want to tell their stories about what they're doing. They have this platform, the stage to do that. And then you see, the rest of the industry listening and absorbing and taking those ideas on. So most recently, I was in Boston at the Viva Summit. That was earlier this year. And an organization was up there on the stage, on the keynote stage. This information is available to all Viva customers. They can see it on Viva Connect, but I won't share here who it is exactly. But they were talking about how they have gone from thinking about separate silos of content processes to bringing them together. So gone from thinking we have MLR to approve our content. We have a content factory to create content. We've got amazing marketeers with these content strategies that we're building. Pulling all of that together, consistently making sure that there are threads all the way through, they're measuring the metrics all the way through it. And what I love to see is saying, okay, we've got this solution, PromoMats. What can it do? What can it do that we're not taking advantage of? And there are so many people out there who'd be in the same boat. There are things that they can use that are available now that they perhaps didn't even know about. So it was getting deep with the Veeva experts to say, okay, I want to be able to compare two documents and know what the similarities is between the two so that I can inform some processes further down the line. So, for example, if I've got a brand new electronic detail aid, to use the example from before. Actually, we had one of those similar a month ago, but this one's slightly different. Well, let's not treat the approval process for this second piece in exactly the same way. If it's 90% the same, well, then let's automate slightly different processes. So you can do that in Veeva. So that's just your content similarity being a capability that is available. So it was embracing specifics within the technology to be able to do that. And then finally, this customer has be able to take it all the way through to the end. So we talk a lot here. We've talked about your content strategy, developing your content, getting it approved. In some markets, the content that's approved has to go to the regulators, so that, or the health authorities. In the US, the FDA, for example, you need to send the content to the FDA before you're allowed to publish it out to market. So that process can be very manual to do, unless, as you can probably imagine, I'm going to say, you're using the Veeva technology to automate that process and automatically be able to publish it to the FDA. So this organization was talking about how they've been able to go from content strategy, thinking about the way they're managing that, all the way through to publishing it to the FDA, and then measuring not only the time and the efficiency, but the impact that content is able to make to their customers.
And digressing slightly, a question out of personal curiosity, and pardon my ignorance and lack of knowledge about this, and correct me if I'm wrong. But as I understand, I think the MLR process can be broadly divided into two major areas. One is the technical review, where you've got to make sure that all the references are tagged correctly and there are no technical errors. And the second is medical review process. So I assume the automation in the MLR review process would predominantly come from the technical review aspect, or does it also have some role to play in the medical review?
I probably think about it, because I think about it every day, in a more complex way. Even if I'm when I simplify it, I think about 6 steps actually in the process. You have content that's being, so step number 1, you think about content being submitted. So that's typically like an agency preparing the content and getting it ready, which means substantiating the claims that are being there with the clinical papers, etc., getting that ready. Step 2 typically is then, in the pharma company, somebody who is an MLR specialist, PRC specialist, many different titles for that role. But this is a function in organizations, and their job is to make sure that this content is ready for the MLR process. They manage the entire thing, very complicated process that they manage. Then when you actually get into the MLR review, there are 2 stages. The first is sort of that it's MLR, but it is medical, legal, and regulatory. Not all are always required. In some cases, it might be just medical, sometimes just regulatory. Sometimes actually none of them are needed, depending on the piece of content. But they are doing often more of that, yes, more of a technical review on the claims and the effort, making sure that the content is right, which then moves to step 4. Sorry, you did ask. Step 4, I'm nearly there. Step 4 is then that approval of the content. So this is where you would typically, let's say in the UK, you would have the medical director who is responsible and is designated signatory to actually sign it off. They're signing off that content by doing a check, but also because they've got the reassurance that the steps previous to it have happened. Step 5, submission to the health authorities. And then step 6 actually is often forgotten when we think about this, is that expiration. So content doesn't live forever out there, and it shouldn't. It's different rules in different markets. And UK, for example, that's where I'm sitting right now. Every 2 years, that content needs to be re-reviewed to check it's still relevant, it's still right, and it's still accurate. Yeah, different rules in different markets, different organizations have different rules. So managing that as well is important. So yeah, 6 steps, and thinking about each of those and where the opportunities are for automation in each of those steps is what I think about, and the customers that I work with are thinking about constantly.
Wow, that's very well explained. And I can almost foresee the future where the MLR process time or duration for the entire process would cut down to maybe 20-30% of what it is today?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I'm always cautious about throwing metrics and numbers out there without real data and facts to back it up. But that's what I'm working on right now with MLR bot. So we're looking at with the customers that are having the very earliest access to it. How long does it take right now for those individual steps that are happening? And where are we helping to speed things up? And where doesn't it make sense that it is working right now? And so when I come back in a year's time, I can tell you exactly what that looks like.
Emma, content bottlenecks still persist in many companies, despite tech teams are still working in silos, repeating work and facing approval delays. Where do you see the biggest unlock for pharma and biotech companies today, especially for those trying to scale personalized engagement without burning out their teams?
I think the biggest opportunity, and we recently released some of we have Veeva released pulse metrics, we call them pulse data, which is industry-wide information about that we can see from all of the interactions that are happening. And I think it's taken a close look at that, which that informs my answer to your question here. There is a huge amount of content that is created and that is rarely or never used. So we see nearly 80% of content that is created for the field is rarely or never used. So why is that? Why is that? I mean, there's many theories on it, and it changes depending on the organization. But get really crisp on that. Really deeply understand what is the content that is going to be used. And when you have content that you believe is excellent, but it is not being used, well, why isn't it being used? I actually attended an event last week where there was a panel, and they had somebody from global marketing, somebody from a local marketing, somebody from compliance, somebody from an agency, and somebody from the field, an actual sales manager, talking about this exact point. And you can see that every step on the way, there are opportunities, let's say, or there are gaps right now in how things could be better. So the field teams, they have too much. You imagine you're about to step into a meeting with a customer. You have 100 different slide decks. Like, you're just going to go to the one that you are familiar with, you use all the time, you know it works. So remove the noise and train the teams better. But there's also a point, yes, just making sure that you're not just creating more. That's the danger we have right now in the industry with AI. There's the opportunity to create more, and more content will be there. So resist the urge to create more. Focus on quality and make sure that it's the right content, the relevant content for your customers.
Right. I think you brought out a very good point about familiarity with the content, because I remember my early days as a rep at the start of my career, and we used to have those paper-based visual aids. And I would always use the visual aid from the previous quarter because I'm more familiar with it. I know exactly what's written in there. And so I think you're spot on.
Yeah, I mean, it came up last week in this event that we're all human in this, and you have to think about how you are helping those humans be more efficient. And unless somebody took you out of the field for a couple of days to really deeply explain why this content, this new, is better, how to use it, explain any questions that you have, help you role play with it, then yes, you're going to use what you're familiar with, because you know it's worked really well for you, and your credibility is on the line, isn't it? You're the one standing there in front of that doctor. I want to make sure that they know you know what you're talking about.
Right. Spot on. Very well said. Emma, if we zoom out, content is no longer a final deliverable. It's a strategic function that lives throughout the product lifecycle. What's your long-term vision for the future of content in life sciences, and how do you see Veeva's role in shaping it?
I think it ties back to many of the things we've been saying, and actually follows on from the conversation we just had right now. I think we're seeing this shift from more content, let's just create more, to quality, effective good content. But we will only get that if we are being really good at measuring it as well. So, and not just sort of vanity metrics on, the great dashboards, doesn't look that low. I mean, what I'm really excited about, and this is actually shorter term vision, but I see this being really impactful to the future vision, is the ability to be able to, on a single platform with Vault, be able to pull metrics from what's happening in the field immediately in real time, to a marketeer who's making decisions on what they do next. You almost say, well, why isn't that happening right now? And it isn't, because it's a very complex, fragmented process. But if you are sitting there as a marketeer and making a decision on, what are we going to do? What content? What am I asking my agency to work on next? Being able to understand the content that has been really effective, that is being used by the field, not just that visual aid that was from a quarter ago. Be able to use that to drive your decision making for the future. But I think so. That's an example of it. Clearly, AI is going to help with a lot of this as well. It's going to help make suggestions based on it, but only if we can really. We are measuring it and tracking it. So I think that's what we're excited about. So excited about a future that becomes more agile and really connected.
The road to 2025 is looking increasingly intelligent, especially with innovations like MLR bot on the horizon. What can the industry expect from Veeva in the near future, and how are you preparing your customers for what's next?
I think that's a great question. Our customers can expect us to continue to want to get closer to them. And not everybody does, but the ones that we do, I thoroughly enjoy that partnership that we have. And it happens at various different levels in organizations as well, which is always interesting to see. And we've great relationships with people that work in the IT, but then also in the business and with the medical teams. So yeah, I think more of that. So I've really seen firsthand the power of this year building MLR bot and working with this focus group of customers. How not only have I got a huge amount of input and feedback from them, but I know, well, they've told me, but I can see it as well, that they're getting real value from it themselves. They know they are helping building something for the industry. And we all know we love to do things that are helpful and useful, but they're able to take that back to their organizations then as well and know that they're making an impact. So, plan to do lots more of that. I think it's a great model for when we're bringing products to market, staying close to the customers. So yeah, to the customers, the people that are using PromoMats, the people that will use MLR bot in the future. You hear new announcements, new products that we're bringing to market, people who want to get close to the development of it. Let us know. We won't always know who you are. Sometimes we go to the people we know. Yes, people raising their hands and saying they want to get included, they want to be part of it. We will embrace that. Absolutely.
That's fantastic. Emma, you are uniquely positioned at the intersection of strategy, tech, and customer behavior. What trends do you think content, medical, and regulatory teams can't afford to ignore over the next 18 to 24 months?
The trends they can't afford to ignore, perhaps that are different to things that we've already said. I'm going to have to mention AI again, but it's that moving from experimental, let's just try things, see if we get value, to, okay, let's use it in our organization. Let's think about enterprise solutions and move forward. I think we've talked about that growing emphasis on effectiveness. So not just thinking about create more content, make sure that content is more effective. Across the industry, we know there are so many more product launches happening, organizations constantly thinking, how are they going to bring new indications to market as well? I think that the expectations for doing things faster and learning from others. And somebody interestingly I heard say last week was best practices. That can be a funny word because best practices means you're just following a rule book, but trying new things, but trying it in a way that means you are pushing boundaries, but collaborating with the teams and cross-functional to make sure you're getting the right inputs. So I hear regulatory teams saying and driving the opportunity to include earlier upstream. Likewise with medical, collaborating with commercial teams upstream, doing it earlier in the process. See, that's where they're actually able to try new things and experiment with launching things in new ways. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's anything other than what I've already said. It's AI, it's coming of age. Make the most of it, embrace it, learn it. It's thinking about content differently, being more effective and less volume based, and yes, collaboration, cross-functional work with the teams that you work with in your organizations.
Stop me if I'm going too far with my imagination, but do you ever envision a future where pharma companies are no longer required to create content because the doctors have a virtual assistant who tells them, who gives them unbiased information about everything they need, and there are no reps, there are no visual aids, there are no brand websites?
I hope not.
Maybe.
And I think about you would have been in the field with customers. Yes, AI and assistants will help 100%, and they need to. There are huge pressures on our medical systems, on the healthcare systems right now with time pressures and cost pressures. But I think the ability to talk to a human as well, who is an expert in this specific area, who's then also listening to that customer and their insights and bringing it back to the R&D side of the world, not too dissimilar to what I do when I think about technology. That's something that we wouldn't want to lose as an industry. And I don't believe healthcare professionals would want to lose that either. I know sort of access from field teams gets harder, but where we know that the doctors that we speak with, they value it when the pharmaceutical companies, they're bringing something of value, they're bringing new information, and they're helping them cut through the noise to something that's going to make an impact to their patients. Like, we do that right. We continue to do that right. We'll need content to do it, because we know that content helps to make sure those engagements are even more meaningful and impactful. So it'll change. But will it go away? No.
That's very well said. And I think we might have touched upon this question already, and feel free to skip it if you wouldn't like to answer. But what advice would you give to someone listening? Maybe they are inside a traditional organization and they want to drive meaningful change at the intersection of content, technology, and compliance.
I would never want to skip a question. It's something in me, like this, from always want to answer and address it. And maybe that's it. You're there in an organization, perhaps more traditional, and thinking about what can you do? Well, be curious and look to learn more. Sounds like I'm plugging the Veeva Summit, but I am, obviously. Come to the Veeva Summits. If you work in pharma, the ticket is there. Just register. Though it's such a wonderful opportunity to learn from what others are doing. It will inspire you. You'll hear 100 different things, but there might be one or two that that will make an impact in my organization, and it's something I can do quickly or easily. You'll also learn how, not just like what this of technology does, click here, or even what the value of it is. How does somebody else make it happen in their organization? Because that's the real trick. And that's what you can only learn from networking with others and learning from others. So I think, be curious, get out there, find the ways, listen to podcasts. There you go. And, make the time for those webinars that come up. I do the same. We're all so busy. But make time for yourself and for your learning, because that will help your organization in the long term as well. It won't just help you. If you're being curious and learning and innovating yourself to learn more, you will do better for your company overall.
And finally, if our audience could walk away with just one big idea from this conversation, one mental shift, what would you want them to?
The key thing we've come back to a few times in this discussion is that innovation in content isn't about creating more. It's about the right content. It's about being able to do that faster with built-in compliance and making it relevant to the real world. So it's a mindset shift. Think about creating more, or this is the playbook that we've always worked with. This is how we do it. Bring your new ideas, your new thinking, and think about doing less. Less is more.
Wonderfully summarized. And that brings us to the end of our today's conversation. Emma, thank you for not just showing up today with insights, but with clarity, conviction, and vision. In a world where the pressure to do more, faster, and better is relentless, you reminded us that speed doesn't have to come at the cost of strategy, and that innovation isn't always about invention. Sometimes it's about reimagining what already exists and doing it with intention, intelligence, and a human-centered lens. What stood out most in this conversation is that content isn't just content anymore. It's infrastructure. It's communication, it's compliance, it's competitive edge. And the way you and your team at Veeva are quietly and boldly reshaping how life sciences companies bring ideas to life through platforms like Veeva PromoMats, Medcoms, and MLR Bot is nothing short of transformational. Emma, on behalf of myself and everyone in Drug Diaries community, thank you, not just for your time, but for your work, your leadership, and your willingness to take us behind the curtain. This is where the future of pharma begins, not in the lab, but in the way we choose to communicate, collaborate, and challenge the status quo. Until next time, this is Drug Diaries, and I'm your host, Kaushik Trivedi.